couple of minutes for questions, so we'll jump right to our first responder, Cheryl-Ann Simino. Cheryl-Ann.
I'm over here. Over here.
Please.
Just want to give you a quick scenario, and then I want to put a question to the panel. In November, I was lucky enough to go to Toronto to be part of a Canadian patient expert in healthcare technology assessment. And we were giving training and giving a portfolio to work with, just like a Minister of Health, to decide on what was going to be reimbursed. And interestingly enough, one of the things on our portfolio was PSA testing for men. And quite a few of the groups said, hey, you know what, there's not enough evidence to back this. We as patients are not going to approve the $230 million to put PSA testing available for men in Ontario. One group did agree to do it. But the interesting thing was next day we had a panel of experts from government, insurance industries, and all the other stakeholders in the decision-making process. And one of them was David Kaplan. And he actually came clean to us patients and said, you know, in 2008, I made a decision that I regret. And I went against the advice of all my medical advisors and everybody else. And I approved PSA testing for men to the tune of $230 million. I think I could have used the budget a little bit better. And I thanked him for sharing that with us. And it brings me to my point that I want to put to you all. I think we have to agree that we all have biases within the decision-making process, but it would be nice to see that the patient's biases themselves can also be brought to the same table with everybody else's biases and admit that they're there, and then let's just move forward and make the decisions so that we can do the best to all save our tax dollars and invest them in the right resources. So if that's the situation, where do you think we need to go to get that kind of pushed out throughout the system?
Go ahead, Heather.
So I can only sort of talk about how we work with our patients, because you're right, you know, typically the patients that end up on very august groups are not the typical patients. And so how do you make sure that you represent the groups of patients broadly and you serve the people who are the unserved, right? Because we have a lot of the worried well. So what we do is we have a patient alumni, and any patient who comes through our doors, it's about 10,000, and you sign up if you want to. Anybody who comes through the door is part of this alumni. It's run by patients, and it's a very patient-centric group, although it's supported by us by infrastructure. So they have newsletters and speakers and everything that goes along. It's been in place since before I was there, so more than 25 years. But that is a group that has the diverse patient population in it. So we meet with them at least 3 times a year, not to sort of say, oh, we want to do this, what do you think? We just go and we talk to them. What are your problems? What are your challenges? How can we help? Telehome monitoring came out of one of those discussions where they told us we can't keep driving to Ottawa, et cetera. So I think to the extent, and I can only speak for the cardiac patients, but we have a large number of them and they come from the region. They are a broad base. They are a place to go. We listen to them without going specifically to ask a question, and we use their information regularly to help shape. And I think the wider and broader you go for the patients, the better chance you have that you're going to serve the broader patient community well, would be our experience.
Dania?
Peut-être plus largement que le projet.
And perhaps a little more broadly speaking than just my project. In terms of technology assessment and intervention methods in health, using the focus of our research center, we're developing a model to help the participation of patients in defining our research projects on health technology assessment. So we are going to move forward on that. But more broadly speaking, in all of these projects to help us redefine our processes within the facility, we've agreed that there would always be a patient, one that is able to participate with us in the review of all the processes. We think that this is going to give us results in the long term. Now, in terms of our project, if we look at the patient side of things, in terms of expenses, we should have savings. We should gain efficiencies by getting the representative of the patient in order to reduce the risk and improve the benefits. And through reallocating the resources and reinvesting, we could better meet some of their needs, sometimes things that we can't do now because we don't have the means available?
I think that's a great question. So I'd just like to say that the work that was done by CADITH was very much informed by patient input. So there were focus groups that were done across Canada. Those focus groups actually gained information from patients as to about how frequently they tested, what did they do with the results, were they useful when they shared them with their physician, and they actually bounced off that patient group. This is what we're thinking we will recommend, and what do you think about that? And there was a lot of buy-in. There was actually a really strong uptake and encouragement or support for that guideline. However, when we made the policy release in Halifax, because we hadn't done enough work, I think, at the patient level, that immediate pushback from an organization that speaks on behalf of patients really harmed us. So I'm not sure how you go about that. In our work, when we developed our decision tool, we engaged patients in that, we tested it with patients, we had providers work through it with patients, and they liked the fact that they were engaged in that decision-making process. Again, we're just now a little bit leery as to, do we step out again with a policy statement? Have we done enough at the consumer level? So I would really welcome thoughts from consumers as to how we get more of that buy-in and support for a work that's very sound from an evidence point of view, really did all the right things up front by engaging and making sure that was reflected in the work, and then had a pushback that was really hard to anticipate and to be able to counteract. So the question would be back to you, because I think we're stymied a little bit by that.
Thank you. I think lunch awaits. So in closing for this panel, I'm struck by the question that Andrea Picard asked to Chris Power, and her answer, a great answer to that question about there's so many wonderful initiatives happening across this country, and it's really enforced some of the direction that our board has asked us to take. Get beyond being just a producer, start brokering some of the information, the evidence that's being produced by others in this country, in academia, at hospitals and health authorities, other provincial programs, and getting this information used and contextualized at every level across the country. So with that, please join me in thanking our wonderful speakers today.